This week, how proactive tax planning can help you avoid sending too much money to the government while leaving more money for your loved ones in charity. Welcome to Bullshift the podcast. This is the podcast that talks about how the financial services industry shifts your attention to make you feel more bullish. My name is John DeGuy. I'm the host of the podcast and the author of the book, Bullshift. My guest this week is Mark Halpern. Mark is the CEO of wealthinsurance.com Inc. He has unique experience with regard to life insurance, philanthropy, tax minimization, and estate planning. Mark, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I know we've been speaking about this for a while, so it's a very lucky day for us to actually get connected.
It's funny how people talk about not putting off insurance. Well, we've managed to find ways to not get together. I'm delighted to be able to do that. And since you're the insurance expert, this is a bit of a unique situation here for Bullshift the podcast. Normally, I talk about how the financial services industry gets people thinking positively about things, but on the insurance side, it's actually more about not thinking about what the negative consequences of not having insurance in place might entail. So I know that you've said a lot that not thinking about your taxes and your tax liabilities down the road is a mistake that most people make. Can you maybe walk us through why that is and what your thoughts are?
Sure. So just quickly, my background, which I think is very pertinent for this podcast, is my father, blessed memory, died 50 years ago when I was 11. I was the youngest of four boys. My dad was a great man. He was a busy engineer with no will, very little savings, and no life insurance. So in the civilian world of needs for life insurance, we were really under protected. And it was very tough for us moving, we had to develop a struggle muscle. Fast forward, I work with some of Canada's most successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and affluent families, and you'd think they'd have everything all organized and together. But, John, it's kind of like, the hockey playoffs that we're in right now, right? You'll notice the teams that win the Stanley Cup are the ones with the best goalies and the best defense. Goals are nice too, but everybody loves the offense. And really, the insurance side is looking at the defense to make sure that you've got things organized. And that really means sitting down and doing some planning. And there's no cookie cutter. It's doing the diagnostics and really figuring out what's your tax bill today, what's it going to be, a life expectancy, and are there better ways to pay for it?
Do you find people don't get down to actually doing that work because they feel complacent, because they think they're going to live forever and they just think they can get to it tomorrow or next week or next year? Why is it that so few people are in the same situation as your father and didn't really have proper insurance in place?
Yeah, well, I'd say all of the above. Plus, who wants to talk about what's going to happen when they die or when they become disabled or when they retire and run out of money? It's just not a very sexy topic. We'd much rather get a haircut or go on a trip or go through a magazine. Plus, the other reason is that we're living in a time where everybody's got ADD. Like, let's face it, their attention span is 30 seconds today, 60 seconds. And it's really hard to get to people and get their attention. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot, there's a lot of people doing money. The banks have really taken over the business because that's where the money is. And then you have people who do a lot of things, but you don't really have a lot of insurance specialists. So it really requires it that every family and successful person, they must have a team. And you have to have a team of hyper specialists that includes a lawyer, an accountant, an investment person, an insurance person, a philanthropy person, and everyone's talking together to collaborate to make sure that person's estate is optimized. I remember being at a funeral many years ago of a dentist client of mine, and I was meeting the lawyer for the first time and the banker, and it was the first time we meet is at the funeral, right? These conversations have to be done now while the sun is shining.
So one of the things that you have said, a lot of what you talked about a moment ago is oftentimes most of the listeners, it's just basic insurance and you just buy term and take care of unfunded liabilities. But you work with people that are oftentimes very well-to-do, high net worth and ultra high net worth people, professionals, business owners, people like that. So your perspective is unique in that you can look at the problem when the stakes are really high. I mean, the stakes are always high, as you say. When your dad died without insurance being in place, you all had to get the muscle of being able to get by. But there are also major consequences. And the point that I've heard you make in the past is that if you don't plan, you're inadvertently planning with CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, to give some of your estate away that you don't necessarily have to. I'm wondering if you could perhaps just take a moment to expand on that concept, because I've heard you say it a few times.
Yeah. So just first of all, I think it's really good to frame like who needs insurance. Like first, I always say there are three types of people. Some people buy insurance because they love somebody and they want to make sure that that person doesn't have any debts left. There's food, there's educational funds, etc. That's probably 80% of the population. That's called civilian insurance. The second type of people buy insurance buy it because they don't like the government and they know the government's going to have their hand out after the second to die of a husband and wife, which means that your listeners who are singles, widows, and divorcees have to really pay attention because they're one incident away from a huge tax liability where the government's going to want anywhere between 36 to over 50% of their assets. So you can have somebody who's sitting there that's worth $10 million and we have to tell them, so sad, too bad, you're only worth $6.5 million. That nobody's ever said that to them. So then they'll use insurance as a way to come up with the money to pay that liability versus having to sell assets or give away investment real estate or whatever. The third type of person who buys life insurance buys it because they don't like paying taxes while they're alive. They don't realize that life insurance is almost like a no limit TFSA for themselves personally or for their business. They can put as much money as they want into this insurance chassis. The money grows tax-free. They can access that money tax-free and they can pass it along tax-free. So it's really a very interesting thing. You have to decide which one of these three are you. But certainly in the higher net worth side of things, there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding of how important insurance is. And I'm happy to elaborate on that.
Okay, so let's elaborate then. You've mentioned in the past that a lot of professionals are more reactive than they are proactive. Could you perhaps give any example of what professionals could or should be doing to be proactive? If they think about, let's say, a dental practice, you can have someone who does evaluation as to what the practice is worth, and that can then give you a sense of what it would cost to dispose of it, or what a tax liability would be if the dentist died prematurely. What can be done to be proactive in terms of dealing with your insurance liabilities?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, it's about having a team that everyone appreciates their unique disciplines. And let's face it, you can't be all things to all people. It's just too complicated out there today. So that's very important. But really, when it comes time to the insurance, a lot of people haven't done any planning. They've done investing and building, but they haven't done planning. And when you get past, let's say, an age 50, let's say, and let's say your kids are more grown up, hopefully they're not, on the payroll forever. Although they do, you've heard about Freedom 55, right? So they say Freedom 55 today is when your youngest child is 55. But let's take that aside for a sec. Let's say you get to be 55, 60. Your mindset should be shifting away from making money to three things. One is preserving what you have. You don't realize you have to know what belongs to you and what doesn't. The second thing is you need to find ways to maximize your income because you're not necessarily going to be working anymore. So how can I maximize income in the most efficient way? And the third thing really is tax efficiency. So I had just over the last 2 weeks, here we're talking about insurance. Let's just talk about having a will. I'm being serious. Okay. 50% of Canadians have a will. The other 50% of Canadians, don't, but the ones who do have wills, how many are really up to date? How many of them were done by a professional? How many took into account, U.S. citizenship issues, second marriages, Henson trusts, primary and secondary wills? It's not a do it and forget it. These are things that constantly have to. So one of them that I feel that every Canadian needs to do is they need to go through a planning exercise to basically get a check mark. What's the check mark? That you're not going to run out of money, right? That you're good based on all your assumptions. Here's the tax bill today. Here's what the tax bill will be at life expectancy. And here's a bunch of your never spend money, that you're really the custodian or trustee for the next generation. But what you have to be aware is you're partnering with Ottawa. So can we take some of that never spend money and use it to acquire tax exempt insurance to preserve the entire estate for your family or for charity or for both? And one of I'd love to talk to you about the charitable side because,
Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so I've heard you say that there are 4 tax exempt strategies that people have available to them. I think one of them probably involves charity. Let's talk about the 4 tax exempt ways of looking at the world, and then we can go into charity from there.
Yeah, I think actually the charity part will be the second part, but we don't have a lot of tax exempt strategies left in Canada. There's only 4 left. There's your principal residence, right? You buy it, you sell it. There's no tax for now. The government will be adding a tax. So maybe you'll have $1 million of gain in your house, and then eventually they're going to ding us for tax on principal residence. The second area is TFSA, but it's only $7,000, right? And it's that's kind of like small change for a lot of people. The third area is lottery winnings. If you have a lottery ticket in Canada, you don't pay tax. So don't buy your ticket when you're in Florida. Buy it here. And the last of these tax exempt areas is life insurance, right? Is tax exempt life insurance. The government has taken away surplus stripping, non-CCPCs, going offshore. If you have any investments other than these 4, then there's somebody at Revenue Canada that you love so much because they got their hand out and they want to partner with your success. So it's very imperative that people look at how can insurance help me and my family. The challenge is that people have baggage that they've carried around and they don't like insurance for various reasons.
Okay, so then for people who are charitably inclined, what sorts of things can people do in structuring their affairs to partner to give money to their kids, their charitable causes, as opposed to CRA?
Perfect. So first of all, we love charity. We actually have a goal of creating a national community of 100 charities and professional advisors that if we're all creating $10 million a year of charity and you've got 100 of those, that's $1 billion. We believe we could create $1 billion a year. And what's nice is that it can be done very simply. The challenge today is that people don't know that how effective giving to charity can be to mitigate your taxes. So let's talk high level. In any given year, charitable donations can be used to mitigate up to 75% of your net taxable income, and anything above 75% can be carried forward for up to 5 years. Okay? The thing that people don't know, and I'm talking, I've done this presentation for KPMG, PwC, M&P. There's a whole shelf above. Get this. Charitable donations on death can be used to mitigate 100% of estate taxes and going back the year prior. So if you're somebody out there that has a $500,000 estate tax because you've done the planning, right? Wouldn't it make much more sense to create $1 million life insurance policy for pennies on the dollar or done corporately in an efficient way or even on a cash flow neutral basis using financing? Leave that $1 million to your own charitable foundation or to a charity you care about. That will create $1 million charitable receipt. And now the $500,000 of tax becomes $500,000 of charity. And you're remembered for giving $1 million to charity as opposed to writing that check for $500,000 to the tax department. How nice is that? But that has to be talked about. And that education is not there, unfortunately, by the professionals.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate. Now, it's only a small percentage of Canadians that actually qualify to be able to do that. But it's wonderful if we could actually find ways to reach these people to get them to think about it. So maybe I should ask you. Usually, I come at the question of why do people not have life insurance in place, or why do they not have a will in place? What about the high net worth and the ultra high net worth? Why do they resist putting these sorts of structures in place, given the story that you just told?
So it's a great question. Look at most of the high net worth individuals that I meet and the ultra high net worth, we have some billionaire clients. they really don't need insurance. Like I'm just saying, they don't need insurance. They've got assets that they could turn into cash. It might not be the most efficient thing to have to sell a building or sell a business or borrow money. It might not be. But what happens is those people, they carry with them baggage. First of all, they look at insurance as a grudge purchase, like their car and their house insurance. They remember it when they bought it. It's when they had a mortgage and they had small kids and they had to educate them and put food on the table. That's their mindset. They don't think that they're that way anymore. And it's true, they're not. The other thing is they don't like insurance companies. They don't like insurance advisors. Everybody knows about somebody who went to Florida and put a claim in for some hospital visit and didn't get paid. So everybody's, nobody's going to pay. So they carry this baggage. So what they have to realize is that insurance is an opportunity when you're in the high net worth space. And we've identified 6 ways that really high net worth people could be using insurance as an opportunity. And I'd love to tell you what those are.
If you've got a moment, let's see if we can rattle all 6 off.
Perfect. Number 1, estate taxes. There's going to be a tax bill. How are you going to pay it? You're either going to have the cash available, you're going to have to borrow money to pay it, you're going to have to sell assets, which would be the worst. Imagine selling the family cottage to pay the tax, or you can use insurance, number 1. Number 2, let's say there's estate equalization. There's a lot of second marriages out there, or kids in and out of the business. What do you do then? Insurance can be used to equalize the estate so that everybody is treated fairly and equally, and you could actually be doing it outside of the will to protect yourself against second marriages, etc. Third, key person insurance. There might be a key person in the company, and if they went bye-bye, there'd be a very big financial loss to the company. It could be used that way. Number 4, shareholders agreements. How many people are partners in very big private equity, and would you want to be partners with your late partner's wife and her lawyer in your business? It's crazy. So you need to have a shareholder agreement, and then you need to use insurance to fund it so that there's a guaranteed buyer and a big guaranteed market so that you don't get stuck in litigation. Number 5, if you've got a corporation that has retained earnings, those retained earnings, not only do you have a passive income tax on those, but getting them out of the company, you're going to pay tax of, over anywhere between 46 and up to 70%. You could have a double taxation. Wouldn't it make sense to use some of those corporate surplus and buy corporate-owned insurance and then use the insurance proceeds to come out of your company tax-free to get all that money out? It's an exercise. And then the last area, the 6th one, is in philanthropy. Charity using insurance is not spoken about that much. So it's not unusual for me to have a client, let's say, who has a $10 million estate tax. We buy $20 million of life insurance inside their corporation. It gets paid out. Now they've got $20 million personally to give to their private foundation or their donor advised fund. That creates a $20 million tax receipt. And the $10 million of tax now becomes $10 million of charity. Ottawa got nothing. It was all from moving the shells around. So I would just suggest that it really requires somebody to have the patience and the connections to sit down with somebody and just have the discussion and see what might be able to be done for you and your family.
That's a really optimistic way of ending your commentary. So I unfortunately always have to end my podcast with 2 things. The first is something that I call That's Bullshift, where I ask people to say, what is it about the way the finance industry works in Canada in 2024 that bugs you? So what about you, Mark? What bugs you?
It bugs me that it used to be back in the day, we had partners in terms of the financial institutions we worked with. I mean, you know that too. We had partners in insurance companies, partners in finance, whatever. It used to be people were planners. They were real planners, problem solvers. And then what happened is they became a bit like product pushers or transactional. And then they also went against the grain to find what's the least friction they're going to find in doing their business. And a lot of them found the investment business. There's no underwriting. You build up a business. Again, I used to be in the investment business years ago, but from an integrity point of view, I just want to tell you, I was great at gathering in assets. But if you asked me, is this top down, bottom up, small cap, blue chip, US, I'd have no clue. So I really feel that people are trying to do everything. And as a result, they're doing nothing great. Be a specialist, work with specialists, build a team. And if you do that, you'll have the best of both worlds and you'll get your planning done so that you won't be worrying and having this stuff renting space in your brain, which it does rent space in our brain. And you're going to know that everything is looked after, and I can continue to build this world dominance, and just know that if I should crash and burn, my family's going to be good.
That brings us to Shift Happens. If it was up to you, how would you help the industry move toward greater specialization to make sure things are looked after in a professional manner?
Training, education, mentoring. I grew up with some fantastic mentors who were extremely generous, who opened up their kimono, took me under, no price, they shared all their secret sauce. And they also, I just want you to know, were not such nice guys. They were successful, and they were demanding. And you have to be somebody. We're living in a generation where people are far too sensitive. They don't have to be criticized, even though it's constructive. You have to find mentors, and the insurance companies and the banks and all those people, they need to have speakers, people who are making it happen already right now. They're doing the best. They're like the north on the compass. And those people have to be generous to share their technology, share their what they've got, their resources with other people, and help people to build their practices. But the world's changing. If you're not a problem solver, and you're not somebody who's going to be going deep dive with people, you have no future in our industry. The days of the product pushers and the transactional people, it's going to all go virtual. It'll all go onto the computer, and you'll be out of a job. So build your team and learn and get the education you need.
Thank you so much, Mark. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad I had a chance to finally sit down with you and have this conversation.
Me too. I want you to know all the cancellations we've had since then. I remember one cancellation I had. We had our first grandchild, then we had our second grandchild a month later, travel, all that. This has been really great. And I'd love to speak to you more and see how we can help your listeners further, for sure.
Thanks.
Thanks.
John DeGuy is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. He is the author of both Bullshift, How Optimism Bias Threatens Your Finances, and Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, Protecting Yourself from Well-Intended but Oblivious Advisors. The books are available online and in bookstores everywhere. The opinions expressed on Bullshift and Shift Happens should not be construed as investment advice. You can reach John at jdeguy@designsecurities.ca. or at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387.